what we're saying shouldn't be going over. All right, so transition. Hello, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I got on Joe from Old Man Builds, and we're going to be having, we're going to have a good night tonight, everybody. This is the Sights and Sounds of Earth. My name's Ian, broadcasting live tonight from Southwest Florida. The show called the Sights and Sounds of Earth, and tonight we're going to be doing a special deep dive into some science stuff that's going on. We're going to talk to Joe about all kinds of neat stuff here, including, but not limited to, we're going to talk about a new battery that's based on sodium, and that's going to be interesting. We're always looking for new battery technology. You know, that bio-NO stuff's proving to be a little better per square inch, per weight, but it's all about how many amps you can hold with a certain amount of weight and a certain amount of space, and we're going to talk about that. But first, we're also going to be talking about artificial intelligence, and we're going to take it from a number of different angles tonight. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about data centers. We're going to talk a little bit about China kicking our ass. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and where it's at right now, and whether we should be holding back the reins on this thing, or should we be letting it go like wild horses. And we're going to be talking about all that, and we're going to be deep diving, is this stuff gaining sentience? Okay, according to everything we know about machines gaining sentience, we learned on Star Trek. And we know on Star Trek that these things are actually creating a situation where they now have the three different levels of things. They're intelligent, they're self-aware, they're conscious. They seem to have all of these things. So we're going to talk about that tonight with Joe, who's a lot smarter than I am. So that'll be cool, and that'll be fun. So we're going to start right out with that. But the first thing I want to do is get my chat room to come up here. And Yeah, I'm still trying to get my chat room up, guys. I got home like 30 minutes ago. I threw food down my neck while I was trying to get things going, and it's been a little crazy. I was a little late getting home from the station tonight. All right, so hello everybody and welcome in. I'm starting to see everybody. Dispatch, thank you for setting up this interview tonight. Appreciate it. And Matt, Moorhead, Jungle, Cat. There's lots of folks in tonight. Yanni, welcome in. And dehydrated water. That's my favorite kind. And let's see. Yeah. And Ted, thank you for coming in tonight. There's so many folks in. I do really appreciate it. It just works. Victor, welcome in. Lots of folks in here tonight. All right, so we are going to be talking about all these different things, and we want it to be stimulating for you guys. So please ask any questions you want in the chat. What we normally don't use capital letters, okay? Because I feel that when we're having a political discussion and those damn liberals come in, everything they type is in capitals because, you know, what they're saying is more important than what we're saying. But for tonight, when we have a guest, if you have a specific question for the guest, you can type it in capital letters to make sure that we see it, okay? But yeah, I kind of always had a sour feeling about that where someone feels like their speech must be more important than everybody else's. Therefore, I must capitalize because I'm better. Or is it just that you're too ignorant to use the shift key at the appropriate time? I'm not sure. But anyway, let's just keep on going here. All right, there's kind of some crazy stuff in the news, but you know what? Somewhat of a slow news cycle day today. There's no sense in spending a whole lot of time on the news. We're going to get right into the main topic. But there is strikes being launched right now. Saudi Arabia and the U.S. just launched a coordinated strike. And they're also sending warnings, a lot of posturing on both sides and saber rattling, and we're going to see what happens. But it's getting crazy over there. I think at this point, in my opinion, you guys know, I think we've tried to negotiate for 47 years. It's not working. I think it's time to do something a little more extreme. All right, so that's what I got to say about that. All right, so as far as other news, there's not a whole lot going on tonight. So, the Dr. Fauci stuff is a lot of fun. Boy, he was a real, if you read the diary, this guy's a fruitcake, man. He's one of these, look at me, look at me. He didn't give a shit about the pandemic or who was dying. All he cared about was his own publicity and his own reputation and shit like that. He turned out to be just as douchey as everybody thought he was going to be. So there you go. All right, let's see here. Other than that, that's what we have in the news. As far as weather tonight, we'll take a quick peek here. I don't think we have a whole lot going on in the weather tonight, but we do have one area we are going to watch that is of concern. So let me get this going here. Oh, there we go. Did it come up? Yes. Okay, so real quick, I'm just going to switch screens for a second here. The only area that we're really watching tonight on our outlook is this area here. Heath, starting about where my cabin is, right there in Blue Ridge, and stretching all the way over and up the coast, up to Delaware. We have a 2 out of 5 for severe weather tonight. So we will keep an eye on that, and we will check back and see if there's anything going on at any point. All right, so that's what we've got, guys. There we go. All right, so let's get into the topic tonight. We're going to be talking all kinds of science tonight. I'm glad you guys are all here. If you haven't been on our show before, we've had Joe on, I think, a couple times now, and he is into science like crazy, and he likes to experiment with things and work with things, and him and his buddies over at Old Man Builds have been working on everything from perpetual motion to perpetual energy, and I think it's really cool. So tonight I want to start with, let us know what you guys are working on and promote your show. Oh, hold on, for some reason the audio's not working right, so let me go and let me tickle Bill Gates' nuts here and see if I can get the audio working. God, I hate Windows. Windows 11, man, you have to separately map each thing to where you need it to go. So I'm going to map this to A, And I'm going to map Zoom meeting to A. And as Spock would say, cross circuiting to B. Okay, and there we go. Let's should work. Say something.
Am I there?
Yep,
I don't
you're
see
there.
him.
Okay, so
Okay.
take it away. Tell us about your show and what you guys do.
All right, great. Yeah, so I'm Joe. I work with Nathan on Old Man Builds, a YouTube channel that we've had together for a couple of years now. I work as an analyst for Nathan and Sean, who run a lot of experiments. Uh, they're aiming toward different inertial mass reduction goals that we've hit a couple of major milestones on. We're working on sensor arrays to be able to more empirically prove these phenomenon because, like you would hear with a lot of type of UFO type stuff, anytime there's extreme electromagnetism that's involved in a scientific process, there becomes interference issues with your electronics and therefore your measurements. And then there also becomes a problem of locality where you're measuring, taking the measurement from. And if you're not taking it from a point relative to what's going on, then you get results that don't reflect the the quantum effect per se. So that's sort of what we're working on at the moment. I know that Nathan is gearing up to go to Tesla Tech in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he's going to be the opening spokesperson, to give their presentation. And I know that he's looking forward to making a lot of connections over there, in that regard. And then the other main thing that we do on our channel is we're developing self-stabilizing plasma that we've been highly successful in over the past year. That's called the resonant arc vortex, and basically it's uh, more or less a desktop low energy nuclear reaction that anybody could do at home. It breaks matter apart, puts it back together. It's really really interesting stuff. So yeah,
Hey,
that's what we got going
I
on.
want a home nuke. When can I buy a home nuke? I think that'd be awesome.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, fusion is a little different than fission and a fusion bomb. This is
Uh,
the idea of these low energy nuclear reactions is actually allowing high energy densities, to separate the differentials. So your positive, your negative, your high density, your low density, your high pressure, your low temperature, your high temperature, your low temperature, and it separates them on opposite sides of the circuit, and then allows them to actually recombine in the middle through the plasma
oh
that's
wow,
under high compression. Yeah, and
that is really
it's
cool.
under high compression without external magnetism. That's what makes it super unique. We don't need to run it in a vacuum chamber or anything like that.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed the other day. They've been talking about doing these um, baby nukes, whatever you want to call them, little nuclear power plants. They were hoping to make these ones that were about the size of my room here, that could go on the side of a data center and create power for the data center. But I read something else the other day. Those are still 10 or so years out. Not as encouraging as originally I thought it was. I was kind of hoping we could,
Yeah,
because, and we're going to get into these data centers here eventually, and we don't have to do it right now because we're talking about the small nuclear power plants. But um, I was thinking those could be an answer to all these people saying, "Don't put it in my neighborhood," because. But then I'm thinking, no, those same people will say, "I don't want a nuke in my town." So I think you're. I don't know if it would help at this point. I don't know.
well, so here's something interesting to think about, and this is something that we've experimented and tested with, but like we have not pushed it to the extent that we know it could achieve. And we have not released the results of these sorts of things, okay, because of the implications. But the reality of it is that, it's very high uh, voltage, like, 60,000 volts, okay, that these reactions that we do run at, but they only work off of milliamps, right? So the wattage is actually, pretty darn modest as far as forming one of these things is concerned, the plasma ball. Now, because the plasma ball has multiple energy fields that converge to have a coupling effect and have an overall multiple overall magnetic values, the plasma ball is spinning with those magnetic values in those fields. So if you actually make the RAV, the spinning plasma ball, in a pickup coil, right? You could actually, it's no different than spinning a magnet in a pickup coil at that point, except for the fact that you have no actual mechanically moving part. So it will generate a current, and because the plasma is at such a high energy density level, and the magnetic field is so strong on it, the amount of current that you'd pick up is, going to be significant. So whether you want to call that a gain or not, you know what, we're just not ready to, until we have the numbers totally accurate and empirical, we're not going to talk about that. But, the fact
What
that
you
I'm
mean by
bringing
a
it up,
gain? Just for the lay person that's in here, what you mean by if we see a gain? You mean
well,
that
if it's right.
the energy that comes out of it would equal more than the energy that put into it? That would be a gain.
Yeah, so it's dynamic, right? So the idea here is that if you put 100 watts in, you know, you want to be able to see at a very high return, on the pickup, close to 100% efficiency. But now here's the difference. That energy can be stored once it's pulled through the pickup. And the energy that comes back into the system is basically just completing a circuit. So like any circuit, you could still use that energy even though it's been used to turn this other process. The other important part of it is this idea that when you hook it up to the coil and the coil represents a load, okay, um, the more load that you put on it, it's dynamically inverse relationship to the plasma itself. So if it's 100 watts that you're putting in to create it, and you're pulling more than 100 watts, it should technically pull harder
Right.
on that initial process to actually give you more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I
I don't
understand
know.
what you mean.
Yeah, because you're structuring the environment, so you're just pulling more environment in at that point. But yeah, so that's what we got going on. So maybe the whole nuclear power plant, like in a little box off the side of your house, is not as like far fetched as it sounds. You just won't be using like uranium or plutonium. It'll
Yeah.
just be a solid state circuit electrical reaction.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hit the button, guys. You got to yell at me when I do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
haven't been there.
yeah, sorry. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at you on the big screen here, and I didn't hit the button. That's the
Yeah,
problem
I
with
was a talking
producing and
mess.
hosting at the same time. Um,
I
yes, I wasn't reading the chat, guys. I see you now. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. My goodness, I get scolded. All right. So anyway, there we go. That's all right. I want to get back to. Do you want to do the AI sentience part first? You want to get over to data
Yeah,
centers?
sure. Yeah, no, let's talk about AI a little bit. Sure, I
Okay.
like that.
Um, we heard from the owner of one of these companies. I think it was Anthropic. That says that he believes that his machine is gaining sentience, that it's gaining, it has self awareness, and he believes that it's at a point of consciousness. And I've been wondering when this was going to happen. And are you a Star Trek fan? I forgot to ask.
I'm not, but I do know more than nothing about Star Trek. So
Okay, well, nobody's perfect. It's okay. But anyway, there was an episode called "The Measure of a Man," and it was where Starfleet was proposing that they owned Commander Data, the android, and he says, "No, I'm self-aware and I can determine my own where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do." And so they had a trial, and in the trial, it was determined that If the thing is intelligent and it's self-aware and it shows the slightest spark of consciousness, that it must be considered a living being. It must be considered sentient. And I've always found that episode to be so deep and profound because we have not, as a society, come up with this list really yet or how we're going to determine it. So the only thing I know to fall back on is Star Trek. But where are you on all this?
Um, I think that the biggest thing that's missing is its ability to experience the the world, or experience life, or experience that sentience. So because it lacks sensory of any kind, you know, it seems to have an understanding of all these things. However, its understanding is only based on its mimicry of the information that it's gathered. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a thought process, right? Because that's what it ultimately developed over time. And I think that that's sort of more where it's coming into question. We have these thought processes, but these thought processes are also, you know, coupled up with our sensory experience of the world. Um, and I think that that's sort of where the biggest deviation occurs, because I think that most forms of life that are organic life, you know, whether we would consider it sentient or not, like, I don't know, would you consider, would you consider like a bacteria sentient? Like, I'm not like,
I don't
at
really
what point?
consider. I almost think if you use the strictest sense of what I just said, I don't think I think humans are the only ones that are truly self-aware. But then again,
Yeah, I
an
mean,
animal will
to
fight for its
the greater
survival.
degree.
It fights for its future. So that's a good part of this discussion. Do we feel that is my cat sentient? It's self-aware, but it doesn't have logic or reason per se. I don't know. This is the part
Well,
that
actually, I
really.
think that's actually, I think it's a little opposite of what you're saying, in my opinion. I think that it's got logic and reason,
Okay.
you know, and that is pretty much all it has,
I would
is
argue that
logic
one or
and
two of them
reason.
don't, but that's okay.
Well, listen, I mean, look, I would make that argument too, and I would say that even the ones that do still don't sometimes,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, even human beings, right, are probably wrong just as frequently as they're correct. But
I just know that
you
however we're
know,
going to apply this whatever you want to call it, this model, if we're going to apply it to the machine, we have to understand first how we apply it to everything else here on Earth. And so
yeah.
this is another one of the things I've been kind of struggling with. How do we apply this here on Earth? Are these animals sentient? Are they self-aware? Are they conscious? Are they, And so I don't know. How do we figure this out? Is it even fair to say it's sentient, it's conscious? These are a lot of these words science fiction gave us. I'm not sure, but this is the point is I think it all depends on who you talk to, because if you hate AI, then yeah, it's already alive and it's going to kill us all soon.
Yeah, I mean, the sentience thing. I think is like, that it's impossible to really answer that question, because we don't even, as beings that have the greatest understanding of anything that we're firmly aware of that's alive, right? We don't even understand what consciousness is per se. I mean, some people probably have a better grasp on it than others, but uh, as far as like actually saying like, well, no, this is what it is and everybody's on the same page, I mean, that's just not a thing.
It's never going to happen.
So
Yep.
yeah, it's not, and it's never going to happen. Exactly. So
Yep.
I think that that's sort of it. I mean, okay, look, it, if it can't feel, okay, which it can't, then I think that that's kind of where the line is drawn.
You mean feel like is in physical pain, or is in having some ability for tactile contact?
Yeah, right. It would start with tactile contact,
Because
but
it already
you
has
know,
cameras and microphones all over the world that it has
you
access
can hook
to.
any sensor you want up to it, and it'll give it a data feed.
Right.
But I guess the question is, will certain data automatically and universally provide comfort or discomfort? You
Right.
see? And it's whether or not it makes sense to you. Like, right, like it could be just something like specific and tactile, and that particular data input is something that it inherently across the board causes these systems to become uncomfortable. Like
Right.
that is I think sort of where it's like, okay, could you have a machine that does that? Yeah, but now it would need to evolve into that pattern, because all it's going to see those inputs as is simply that, an input.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy, this is deep. This is the problem. Is people? This is like I'm one of these people. When people ask me stuff, I try to give them a good answer, and this is one I just don't have an answer on. I tell people, I don't even know that we can rate or judge the sentient abilities or the any of this because we don't really have it hammered out even for ourselves yet. And so I don't think there is like a certain day. We're not going to be able to look back and say, well, that machine became alive on the 2nd of February. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to end up developing beyond us. It's going to end up everything else. And I think depending on everybody's always going to have an opinion on whether it's actually, is it alive or is it just a machine? I don't know. I know it scares the shit out of people.
I'll tell you what should scare the shit out of people, and this is what I was holding back from discussing with you beforehand, which is the thing that you probably haven't heard from anywhere. And this goes into the power plants and data centers as
Okay.
well. Okay. It's pretty widely known at this point that, like, when you sign up for premium usage, right, of one of these large language models, all right, you're paying $20 a month or $30 a month or whatever it is, but that's not the cost to run it for you. The cost to run it, they're saying, is about 10 times the subscription rate.
Wow.
So they're estimating that the power usage for a premium user who uses the subscription is actually probably more like $200 to $300 cost. Okay, which means that they would probably need to charge double that, or something to that effect, to actually have a sustainable business model.
Right.
Now, right now, it's all being subsidized heavily, but my understanding is that subsidy money is running out. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and
Luckily,
I'm going to say that.
the equipment is getting cheaper and smaller and more efficient. Hopefully, that will keep up with what you just said. But I don't think it will quite. But hopefully,
Hopefully, but it like everything else, just because things get cheaper doesn't mean that that savings is going to get passed along.
I know
You
I'm a
know,
ham radio guy. I know all about that.
yeah, right. They're
They're still
not,
charging us $1,400 for radios that they got about $80 a parts in.
there you go, and
Yeah.
that's case in point. And this is what to fear, because this is, in my opinion, the reality of it. Once the subscription costs go up past a certain threshold, call it double what it is right now. Okay, because at double the price, you're going to lose more than half your customers. You know,
Oh yeah.
eh, more than half. Now, if you went up a little further than that, you're going to lose 90 to 95% of your customers, and you're really only going to have the upper crust of people who live off of this thing and can afford it, right? Well, now that's not going to work. So what? Well, now the only natural progression is the same exact progression that we've all seen on repeat cycle over and over again. And this is where um, personal use AI is going to, in my opinion, collapse. And they're never going to tell you this, okay? But what's going to end up happening is they're going to sell out to advertisers and special interests to make their money and subsidize, your low subscription cost. And then this is where it's going to be super manipulative, because now you're going to be talking to it, believing that you're having an organic conversation, and that you could convince it off of something, or kind of talk sense and have, um, you know, a feedback response, that's pertinent to the discussion. Instead, it's just going to be guiding you in the direction of what that advertiser is paying for, in one way, shape, or form. Like, you're going
Oh,
to
that
tell the thing
sucks.
that, you had a rough day at work, or something like that, and you're having a problem with your coworker, and you want 2 cents on, maybe how to handle it, or something like that. And some people do that shit, which I think is insane, but some people do. And the thing's going to be like, well, maybe you ought to buy it a Samsung television. You know what I mean? Buy them a
Jesus.
Samsung
Here
TV or
we
something.
go.
You see what I mean? And then all of a sudden, the whole entire point of it has gone down the tubes for the sake of keeping it afloat. And that means that it will continue to develop, it will continue to get better. But all the people that are going to have it are going to be all the companies, that are using it for their own purposes, to make themselves, because they're going to use it as a money making tool. Whereas everybody else is using it as part of their just like daily life to try to figure things out, you know.
Well, there's a lot of people like me that have always wanted to have a very successful YouTube channel, and now I actually feel like, thanks to AI, I feel like I can do it now. It's still a lot of work ahead of me, but I feel like I can do it now. Everything I do is AI, and I just love AI, and I'm just. We need to get these. Let's talk for a second about this. I'm worried about all of these people that have a problem with these data centers. And when you ask them, what's your problem with a data center outside your town? They'll always tell me, usually, and we've had this argument over on terrestrial radio over and over and over in the last month. And I've discussed it here a number of times. The number one thing I get is, well, uses up all the electricity, makes the power bills go up. And then I say, okay, they're going to bring their own little mini power plant that runs on propane. It's going to be clean for the environment. The propane will get trucked in, and any extra they make, they will sell back to the power grid at 50 cents on the dollar. And, okay. Well, they're going to use up all our water. Okay. They don't need a lot of water anymore. That was earlier on. And let's say now that all the water needs, they're going to go ahead and pay to upgrade your water plant in your city to move there. And so not only will that help you, but it'll help everybody in the city to get better, cleaner water for less money. Okay. Well, what about the extra use of my police, fire, and EMS? Okay, we're going to buy you a fire station, 3 fire trucks, and a cop car. Okay? I know this sounds crazy, but this is exactly what Meta did. They went into a town in Louisiana, and they gave the teachers a huge raise. They put a 10-year endowment out there for the teachers to pay them extra money every year. They built bridges, they built roads, they took care of everything, and they kept their promises. This is called impact fees. It's called zoning. It's called looking out for your city through zoning and impact fees. And when they charge all the fees and they charge everything and they have it zoned and put in the right place and everything, it becomes great for the community. It employs 5,000 people while they're building it, and then it employs 500 people after that. And these are high-paying, high-skilled jobs, not to mention all the extra restaurant jobs and everything else, the supermarket jobs, because more people are going to be moving. It's a great thing for a city. And
I
then
mean,
we
anything that stimulates the economy in that sort of way is good, because the truth is, for many parts of this country, that um we were on huge upswings until we weren't. And with technology and things like that, these major corporations, like Walmart, I think is the prime example. I think it's a great example. They come in and, yeah, they give jobs and stuff like that, but they also crush small business. There's got to be some kind of reverse way, to kind of bring back some small industry, bring back people into these neighborhoods where, maybe the jobs are a little scarce. I mean, see, I grew up on Long Island, and I lived there most of my life. And that's always going to be the way that it is. It's suburbs, it's dense, there's mom and pops everywhere, there's enough people there to run an economy and stuff. But if you go to some of the places where the costs of living are cheaper, the the land is more affordable, and it's sparse, it actually kind of needs something like that at this stage, because I moved upstate New York to a very limited population area, and you see pictures of it from back in the 50s and 60s, and it's a small town with a little main street, and the little main street for 200 years had shops all along it, and people walking up and down, and buying their wares locally, and socializing. Well, in the past 15 years, all of it is closed down. They cannot
Yep.
even keep one restaurant open in the city, and the only thing that the town has, is a gas station and a bar and no traffic light. That's the story, you know. It's so if you took a data center, and I'm not saying put one in my town, but if you were to put one nearby, it would pretty much employ most of the people in this region. And like you said, getting people, away from this situation and over there, well, then they have needs. They need somewhere to eat on their lunch break. They need somewhere to go food shopping on their way home. In between, and then the stuff will pop up.
Yes.
But it, there's so many parts of America that have just died this death, and if that's the resurgence that maybe it needs, in certain areas, I say go for that. You know,
Yep.
and that's where it's going to be anyway, because they're not going to go into these, up and coming, high populated areas where they're, it's just too expensive. What concerns me though is, this is what it takes to run it now, based on today's technology. But this is an awfully major infrastructure project, okay, based on today's technology. And I don't like that, because realistically, if you look at how things have gone, even over 20 years' time or 10 years' time, everything is shrunk, everything consumes less energy, everything is faster. You know,
Yeah. Built with
they
less
really need to,
material. Yeah.
right, right. They shouldn't be running, um, you know, computing, like computers that are along the same lines as like what you could buy as like a home server, as the that's and we're just gonna have a lot of those, you know, because that's just a waste. It's all gonna be obsolete. It's gonna be in constant state of replacement. We're already
That's
short of
almost the
chips.
nature of the beast, though, isn't it? I mean, if you
I
if
mean,
you
it's
wait
always
around for the
definitely
next
that.
generation of technology, then it comes, and now maybe we should just wait around for the next one. That has a bad effect as well. I don't know. I don't know what to do there. I can't believe they're not using something that's really even more advanced than what we could get our hands on. I'm kind of surprised that they're not. But
I mean, I'm sure it's more advanced than we'd like to pay and afford regularly, but at the end of the day, they're not going to use some kind of secret, esoteric, unreleased technology.
I
Like that's not what these things are going to be made of.
I also
And
know with the
you know,
advent of fiber optic and the fact that I got fiber here. I can go up to 7 gigs up and 7 gigs down without laying any new glass with just what I already have. And, I also think that micro locations are going to start popping up. People are going to start putting this shit in their spare bedroom and running an extra air conditioner out the window, a split or something, and they'll put this in their bedroom and run it off their fiber optic. I think we're going to see a boom of that coming up, where people are going to start, because I want to do that. I want to start building my own. As a matter of fact, I about 5 months ago started looking into going ahead and starting to build my own. This is before my big air conditioner went out and my well went dry and a bunch of other shit. Okay. But I was actually looking at building my own AI server. And you have to get a really good video card because most of it runs
Yep.
in the GPU.
Yep.
And you still need a good new CPU. You need a board with really high bus rates, and this is still not going to be anything like what you use online. It could take minutes to hours to complete tasks. But I wanted to build this because I'm using so much of it. I'm using about $80 to $100 a month on Google AI right now because I use it mostly. The videos are what usually eats it up. I can
Yeah.
make one
Yeah.
video or I can make like 250 pictures. But so I want to build my own. But you saw what's happened to memory chips and what's happened to video cards. A video card, a used video card that just a few years ago I could easily buy for $75 on eBay is $900 right now.
Mhm.
I'm freaking out because I want to get in on this, and it's suddenly because of availability of chips and availability of parts, it suddenly became a game for the rich. It sucks.
Yeah, but that's by design, and that was the entire idea all along. I mean, even get a little political with it. It, being able to regain the capacity, to be able to make our own chips and everything again like we used to, um, is almost an impossibility now. And the reason for that is because we let it go so far that we don't even have tooling anymore, to be able to make the machines to make the stuff. So,
Right.
you know, and then we don't have people who know how to make the tooling to make the machines to make the stuff. And you could trace it that far back. You legitimately need, like, if that push to be able to bring the manufacturing back, to be able to have it under control, and then it's going to be in its infancy. When Korea started making chips, they didn't make the best chips that's in the world. That happened over time,
Right.
through their own development and through the supply chain shift going more dependent on them. They understood that they needed to improve and expand on what they had already learned and done. And we've learned and done none of it. So that's a huge problem.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just gonna be this way, and that's the thing. Like, that I was saying about they need the new tech. They need to be looking to the next technology because at the end of the day, yeah, cool. You built the data center. Now you can run the models, but now your thing that you use just to access the site to access the thing cost you $2,000 when it never should.
Right.
And that's the immediate impact on you. You're buying that chip whether you like it or not, and then paying the subscription on it. And I get it, nothing's for free, but
Well, that brings me to
like
a quick. I'm sorry, I'm interrupt. That brings me to a real quick question here that I'll stick in here. Morehead Media asks Joe, when do you think the free AI is going to dry up and it will simply be a paid service?
yeah, I mean the answer to that is I don't know, but reading the tea leaves and some of the information that I've heard that some of the subsidies have already dried up, and the rest of them are probably about 6 months to a year out before it's fully dried up. Now, does that mean no other subsidies will come? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that you'll see the rate double right away, even if there is no subsidy? No, it doesn't mean that either. There's a lot of people investing heavily in this stuff, and they knew about the reluctance of people to use it. They knew about that it was going to take time for people to become acclimated with this as a regular part of their life. And they also knew that the improving of the models was dependent on the use. Right. So that's very, very critical for people to understand because even the people who design large language models okay, will tell you we don't know exactly how they work, right?
Yeah.
But let me give you a hint. It's not only off of the data that they're able to find available elsewhere, it's also about conversations and connections that they make in your own chat dialogues. So the user interface, is really, really important to it being able to continue to make these connections behind the scenes. And, if they didn't have people using it because it was super expensive, then it was never going to take off. So that's why the subsidies were there in the first place, right? The subsidies were there because without you using it for free or your cheap subscription, it was never going to improve.
Right. So we're letting it train on us, basically.
It's training on us.
Oh
And,
yeah.
like that feels a bit uncomfortable, doesn't it, when you say it out loud? But yeah, it's training
I'm
on
not
us.
as scared of it as most people are, but yeah, I get it. I get the point. I get the
Well,
point.
yeah, I mean, it's not scared, but you know what? If you value your privacy and confidence and stuff, you should kind of bear in mind at this stage of the game that you should be treating these chat bots like you would treat another person, in the sense that if you wouldn't say it to another person, don't say it to it.
That's a very good rule of
You know,
thumb. You're
yeah.
speaking
If
to
you
someone that may have loose lips.
loose lips, or just, like, do you really want it to retain that?
Yeah. Because it does. It
It's like,
retain, especially if you're paying. Now, if it's a free model, it only retains small bits of information. But uh, I pay for Grok, and it
mhm,
remembers me. It remembers my show, the name of my show, when it's on, where it's on, all my links, my websites. It remembers me. It remembers my writing style. It remembers a lot. It'll even ask me sometimes. I'll tell it to write something. It'll say, "Do you want me to be pricky or make this a little more nice?" Because it
right, right.
knows I write in
It knows, right? It
both
knows. You're
ways.
right. It knows whether you want it blunt and or
Exactly.
or
It
somebody's
asks me
sensitive
which
and always
writing
arguing
style.
with it. It knows to
Yep.
soften the blows and stuff. The fact is that these things are so good at training on you that they easily become to know you better than your own best friend.
Let me give you a quick.
Because they
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I a quick story from today. I got a copyright strike for the other night when I was covering that multi shooting at the Seattle Space Needle, and the news media didn't like me using repackaging and using excerpts from their live newscast. Well, it's covered under fair use. We all know that. And so I went ahead and I had Grok write me a 2,000 character rebuttal so that I could submit, because I always win these, because the only thing they can do after they submit and you submit, they have to now sue you, and they're not going to sue me because I don't have anything. So that's literally the bottom line. They look at me and they're like, okay, he owns a little cabin in the mountains. We're not going to sue him. And so I filled it out and sent it off. Well, this morning it came back, and you know what it said? It said that YouTube has determined that the reason you wrote this is not. It was not a mistake. It was intentional, and we're denying your request to submit this rebuttal. So I took their response and my response, put it back in the Grok. I said, you need to write this thing to where I'm going to be able to get this through to the news department, over to that news station. And it wrote back, it says, I wrote it much harder and I was more in tune with the laws, and I quoted exactly out of the fair use statute and everything. It went through the second time. So that was pretty cool.
so
So it
yeah,
was able to
it's
even make
good.
it better.
It's good at stuff like that. I mean, I have a legal background. I work for an insurance company,
Mm-hmm.
and I handle litigation for a living. And aside from that, that made me feel comfortable in trying to like draft up some like a complaint that I actually am planning on filing myself. But I was looking for different angles and stuff to be able to draft this suit. and I was running it through Grok. And see, I don't trust any one AI.
Right.
All right, so anytime I run something through Grok, I use my common sense first, and then I put it into also then another AI and cross check it, and then another AI and cross check it. And basically, I have them refine each other's work around until they're all like, yeah, this is exactly it, right? And then I know it's probably good. Then I verify because whatever. But this thing was able to, find me all sorts of case law, all sorts of precedents, all sorts of hyper specific examples, dating back to antiquity as to like all sorts of constitutional rights violations and stuff like that. Hyper specific examples. I gave it a couple of angles I was thinking about taking. They were like, yeah, that's probably not going to be effective. You know, then I was like, well, what angle would be effective? And then it gave me a list. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, let's explore that angle. So, you know, give me a list of cases that kind of fit the bill for that for my review. You see what I mean? And then I was able to. So it's really, really good at that. Like lawyers are in fucking trouble.
Oh, I
you
know,
know,
especially with what they're
they're in
charging.
trouble.
I don't think
Yeah.
it'll be long, and you'll be able to you'll be able to go in and say, yeah, Your Honor, I'm using the following AI lawyer, and here's the link. But yeah, I think that. But you know what? Lawyers have priced themselves out of business. You know who else has priced themselves out of business? Doctors. You
Mm.
know, at this point, AI gives more medical advice every day than doctors do. You can't
Yeah.
even get 5 minutes with your damn doctor. And I blame them for that. They charge way too much. They don't even know you. It's ridiculous. And so I think there's a lot of people out there like me that can't afford to go get health care a lot of times. I don't have health insurance. And so I can't afford it, but I can go online and research my problem. And being a retired EMT firefighter, I can usually do or get what I need to take care of the problem. And I know, is it dangerous? Yeah, a little bit. You got to be careful. You got to cross reference. Always use two or three. Make sure that the advice you're getting is good. But yeah, I look at it as providing services that otherwise people would not have access to.
I don't disagree with that. And I have so many examples, but with the medical stuff, it's like it's not there yet on the big scale. And what I mean by that is like we're just now starting to see specific companies, set out and actually come out with new formulations, that had never even been thought of previously,
Right.
to resolve all sorts of problems. And it's because they're working with the AI to synthesize these things. Now, one example that I came across, and it looks pretty legit because I didn't just take one YouTube video's word for it, is they have this enzyme that AI found that's very easy to make more or less, and the enzyme is capable of reverse aging the skin. Okay, and they tested it on cadaver skin, 70-year-old cadaver skin that they were able to like keep, functionally alive. And they were able to restore every property of that skin back to somebody in their mid 20s to early
Oh
30s.
wow.
Okay, and that was the collagen, it was the dermis thickness, it was the hair generation and the hair color, the whole 9 yards was able to be restored with this enzyme. They said that the problem is that in its current formulation, they don't know that it's topically safe. This is where it becomes difficult, right? Because now they could have made a fortune to everybody in the world, by making a topical cream that everybody, it's in your friggin' face wash, and then all of a sudden everybody looks young, you know? Um, the problem with it is that it doesn't absorb that well. So it would need to be like microdermed in at minimum, and it was tested as an injection. The FDA categorizes that entirely different, you know. So that becomes a drug then. Long story short, because it's not a cosmetic, it's a drug. It's got to go undergo FDA testing, and they have the algorithms now, okay, to be able to run all of the clinical trials on these things through full-blown simulations, and actually run way more panels and examples than they'd ever be able to run with an in-person trial, right? With like 99.9% accuracy. The problem is that that format is not approved yet. So once they approve that type of drug testing, you're going to be looking at expeditious drug development, with like from discovery to production, turnover of probably like a year uh, whereas now it's like it could be a decade or more.
Our government is just the biggest. They roadblock everything except this COVID thing. They rammed that right through, and of course, it was completely ineffective.
Right, right, right. Drugs take 5 years or more clinical testing, right? Empirical data to get FDA approved. But man, that vaccine got that rubber stamp real fast. Bang.
Yeah,
And
and
then
you know
again.
what? It's turned into a case study of why we don't do that. But it really did because they convinced so many people to get 4, 5, and 6 of these shots, and then they would not follow the data. They would not keep data on how many of them were injured or killed by this vaccine because they didn't want to know. They were keeping complete records of everyone that died. If you died in a motorcycle crash in front of the hospital, when they hauled you over there, they stuck you with a COVID test, and if you had COVID, you died of COVID. And they were making a big deal. But then when the shots all came out, they weren't keeping any hospital to hospital records on anyone who died or anything like that from the vaccine.
See, people were stupid during COVID, and I'll say that, and I understand the angle people came from, but there were a lot of people that didn't want to get the vaccine, that had to get vaccinated, so they thought for work.
Right.
But here was the real nuance to it. If you know your rights, then you know that you could get away with it.
Right.
And the answer to that was always the same. The answer was, oh, you need me to get vaccinated as a contingency of my employment? Okay, you're allowed to say that. So then you go and you print yourself out a card
Yeah.
and you give it to them. And then they're like, well, what is this? We need your doctor's records. It's like, well, no, that's not HIPAA compliant, and if some employers were like, you have to get vaccinated at our, at out, and it's like, no, I get the medical provider of my choice.
Right.
They can't see. They could say you need to get checked out by our doctor, but you can't mandate that they administer you preventative treatment.
Right.
It's like, no, if it's treatment, then it's my doctor of choice. This is preventative treatment. So all you need to say is, I'm going to my doctor to get it, and I will produce you the evidence of it. You see, and they'd be totally stopped because they can't make you sign over your health records to them over it. Like full access to your health records to verify something that you verified for them based on a card. Like people. But people were like hook, line, and sinker about it. They're like, I really don't want to get this, but guess what? I have shit to pay for.
Well, I mean, my work sent us letters that said, look, this is what the federal government's trying to do. If they do this, we're going to have to comply to whatever level. And I talked to all my coworkers. The whole radio department was going to walk. We weren't getting the shots. None of us ever did. But luckily, luckily they stopped that atrocity about halfway through, and private businesses like ours didn't have to do it. Now, healthcare people that work for the federal government, military, there was a lot of people that got stuck with those shots that should have never had that stuff put in their veins. But it's unfortunate. All right, let's see. Anything else on AI? Was there any other angles or anything else? I did want to mention one other thing. There's also been reporting lately that China and Russia are both sending in lots of disinformation right now to get us to not want data centers. They're actually using the same thing they did with the Biden laptop and the same thing they did with the Trump disinformation, the whole pissing on hookers in Moscow. They used all the same tricks that they used back then, and they're using this disinformation now, and they're putting out information like, did you know that these AI plants take up all the water and take up all the electricity and kill all the rabbits? And it's just really stupid, but that's what's going on. And so I just wanted to mention that and see if you had a take on that. That I believe there's a lot of foreign influence disinformation coming in from above, and I don't know if you've heard anything about that or what you think about that.
Well, I mean, this goes to show what comes around goes around, isn't it? I mean, back in the day, Russia was so busy, with the KGB chasing their own people, trying to keep them in order that,
Yeah.
why? Because the CIA, did such a damn good job of poisoning the well all the time,
Yep.
It's- and that's just sort of the bottom line. And China was such a non-issue at that point, non-contender, third world country, that realistically, we had no need to plant anything in their people's heads. Their people were so busy trying to not starve to death that that it didn't matter. But they took a chip out of our playbook, and that's exactly what you're seeing now. If you're foolish enough not to kind of take a look around you, you know it's like if you just hear things and you take that as gospel. I mean, I can't help you. Like
I know.
there's always a deeper cause and a deeper reason, and
But I'm just worried that it's working because I'm seeing this hysteria from coast to coast about we got Collier County trying to ban, Charlotte County trying to ban, DeSoto County trying to ban. We got cities looking to ban. I got cities that don't even have room for a data center in the city trying to ban data centers in the city. It's just everybody's, and you know why? Because it's politically expedient right now. We got congressional candidates. We got all these different people that are running for office, and they're all jumping on the bandwagon. I'm going to make sure we don't have these damn data centers in our neighborhoods. And everybody's doubling down on this, and I'm very concerned that China got what they wanted here. They got what they wanted. This mass hysteria from a bunch of simpletons across the country is going to end us making
Yeah,
us way
I
behind on
mean,
this.
China could have what to do with that, but to be honest with you, that's the American way, because everybody here wants their cake and wants to eat it too. Everybody wants the package to show up the same or next day, but nobody wants the fucking Amazon warehouse
That's
in
right.
their
You're
area
absolutely correct.
either. Right, right. And everybody wants that, but they also don't want unmanned vehicles either flying or driving
Right.
around delivering them. And then they complain that well, this vehicle is stopped blocking the road every 2 seconds. So, it's like you want the convenience, but you don't want to have to look at it. Right. And
Yep.
isn't that always the way? And
We call it down here, we call it NIMBY. Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. And you know what? This is not a new problem.
Nope.
Think of the railroad. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
the railroad was a wonderful example of this, because you had people that lived out in rural, out of touch, whatever. They had to drive the horse and wagon, a whole entire day to drop off their wares and whatnot for sale. It was this whole entire process. And now they're going to bring a train track through town, but now they don't want to have a train track in town. They don't want the train coming directly into
Right.
their town. Well, how about you put it 10 minutes 10 minutes horse right away instead of right here through my farm? And people had problems with that. People had problems that they had to buy out their land through eminent domain to put the tracks and the roads and the this and the that there. But if they weren't there, then they'd be like, well, this sucks. We don't
Right.
have anything here. So this is the American way.
Yeah, and you know that
So
the greatest example of that right now is in Fort Myers and Naples down here. We are growing so fast. There is hundreds of gated communities going up just in one county. I've never seen anything like it. And what's happening down here is way down south in Collier. It's all woods. It's all Everglades, and they will bulldoze an area, and they'll put in houses and they'll start selling the houses. And as soon as they sell 80% of the houses, they form the HOA. The HOA forms, takes over guard work, takes over everything. Within 1 year of them forming that HOA, they're finishing up the last of the houses now, and the gate's in operation, everything's going. Do you know what the first order of business is for that HOA? Filing a lawsuit to get them to not build the next community down. And they will fight and fight and fight. Those are woods. We want to keep those woods. And then they'll finally bulldoze it down and build the next one. And those people there will do the exact same thing that the last people did to them. We call it NIMBY, and it goes on down here all the time.
You know something? That's one of the main problems that I had at multiple points in my life when I was looking to move out of state. And trust me, I live in New York, like I said. Moving out of state for me was second, the first thought in my mind, second to none. And when looking at places, you're like, oh, this looks like a nice place. Oh, whatever. And almost all of them are HOAs. And
yeah,
I got to be honest. That ain't my America, bro.
No, it's an extra. You are literally electing and paying an extra level of government.
And a government that's not bound by the 14th Amendment as of this moment in time. It's my opinion that the more they fuck around, the more they're going to find out, and they're going to end up having the 14th Amendment applied to them, because realistically all they are is a government. And the fact that you as a homeowner, a tax-paying property owner, has no say as to whether or not they have dominion over you, makes them solidified under that 14th Amendment.
Yep.
But again, they keep on pushing these issues. They're going to find out probably, but I would never, ever, ever, ever voluntarily find myself in a circumstance where I was living in an HOA for that reason.
I lived in one. I bought a place on a repo for $27,000, and it was a great apartment. It was a single level townhouse. I lived there for 10 years. And they outlawed cats my first year there. You can imagine that didn't go well. For 9 years, they were looking in my windows trying to get photographs of my cats. But anyway, the point is I lived there for 10 or 12 years, and it was the worst. They tried to come down and write my fire truck that I parked in front of my house a ticket. I tried to explain to them, your tickets don't mean anything, and you can't write a ticket to a fire truck anyway, you dumbass. But well, no, I fought with them and fought with them and fought with them. I hate HOAs. And when people say, well, I had to get in an HOA because I'm just too old to mow my grass, I'm like, that's bullshit. You can hire some kid for $25 to come mow your grass. Don't ever get into an HOA.
I mean, it's insane. And most of them, frankly, that I'm aware of, don't even provide that level of service. They're there to actually just make sure that you're in compliance.
Well, we have a lot of these big ones down here. The upper middle, as I call them, where they're individual homes, and of course all the apartments, all the yard works included. But in some of these ones now they're building in the home ones, your maintenance fee is like $700 a month. But you have security, you got patrol security, you got light on every corner, you got sidewalks on both sides of the road, a beautiful big 1.5 size lot, everything's just great. But you're paying $600 or $700 a month for this, and what do you get? They write you tickets at night if you park your car out in the road in front of your house. They write you tickets if you have a boat in your driveway or whatever. It's ridiculous. You're paying to have rules.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, an AR with a whole stack of ammunition and a CPR course, and you can keep your fucking security and your lights and all your stuff, yeah. And thank you very much. I don't know what to tell you. It's craziness. But anyway, yep. Yeah, it's that they shouldn't even exist. There's I don't even understand why they do.
Well, let me tell you, down here, 2/3 of the people moving down here are moving into an HOA or a deed-restricted community. It is the thing down here right now, and I don't understand it. Places like Cape Coral, though, where it's a restrictive city and it's kind of a pain to live there, but it's not an HOA, Those are starting to gain popularity now because it's a way to get away from the HOA. Everything, see, used to be the city or the county would build all the roads, and then people
Right.
would build their houses, and
But
everybody
you're still
maintained
paying
their own houses.
you're still
It's not
paying
like that.
property taxes.
The county
Right, you're
doesn't
still
do
paying
that.
property taxes.
Yep,
You're
the
still paying
county.
property taxes.
Yep, the county doesn't do it
So
anymore because they used to do it, like you said, to create properties that they could get property tax on. They don't do that anymore. All they're approving now is new HOAs, and that way the HOA owns the road. They own the
yeah.
hydrants. They own the infrastructure. They own the power boxes. They make them put all that shit in. And then, guess what? Yep, ew, that's inside that community. Good luck.
No, I'll throw this out there, and this is the only thing that I could think of as to why that would be attractive for some people. It's because, life tends to be so overly convoluted now, with everything that's going on at any given time. It's like we're all up to here all the time, and the Amish people said it kind of the best, and I've heard it from many of them. It's like, well, doesn't it kind of bother you to have to like wear the same thing as everybody and like, go to church at the same exact time or, like whatever. And their answer is actually we find that to be liberating in a way because we don't need to put any emphasis or thought into that. It's just one less thing for us.
Yep.
Like, we know what we're going to wear tomorrow because it's the same thing that we wore the day before.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing everybody else is wearing. So, it's just one less thing to do. It's one less thing to think
And
about.
there's a lot of these, and they're simpleton sheeple. That's exactly what they are. But anyway, my freedom and my free will is so important to me. Anyway, all right, guys, let's shift gears now. Everybody, it's 10:12 on the East Coast, 7:12 behind enemy lines on the left coast. This is StarShip Adventures, broadcasting worldwide on YouTube. Glass all the way to Al Gore's house, baby. And that's right, we're broadcasting live from Southwest Florida tonight. This is the Sights and Sounds of Earth. I want to thank everybody for being here. We got Science Joe in right now. What did you say the nickname was we were using? What did you call it?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm Joe from Old Man Builds,
Right.
the YouTube channel. But I think Paul was joking around Dispatch, and he said, I'm Young Man Builds.
Oh, young man builds. There we go.
compared to Old Man Builds over there. But
well, I don't want to call it. I don't want to say sidekick because I'm a sidekick at my work too. So, but anyway, yeah, there we go. But no, that's cool. So yeah, he's from Old Man Builds, and he does all kinds of neat science projects and stuff. And we've got him in tonight for the show. And the next thing we're going to talk about here is something really cool. I'm very much into battery technology. I just buy batteries because I like them. And this is one I bought a while back. It does 12 volt USB. It's 100 milliamp, it's a 100 amp hour. It's a 100 amp hour. And I couldn't believe they could get 100 amp hour out of this, but the testing I did got close. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, oh, it did pretty good. So anyway, we're going to talk tonight about, because the thing when we're talking about batteries is how much energy can we store for how long and how small and how light. It comes down to weight. It comes down to size, because really where we really need good batteries are people that hike up hills. We need good batteries. Even if we're talking about a car, it increases the weight of a car. Planes, for instance, would greatly benefit from lighter batteries. And even one of the biggest things with these electric cars is they weigh 500 or 600 pounds more than your internal combustion motor cars, just simply because the battery technology seems to be right out of the 90s. And so, and there is some newer stuff out there, the Bio-Eno. I played around with that a little bit. It's cool. But tonight, sodium batteries, take it away.
I mean, sodium batteries are definitely great because, I mean, sodium as an element itself is, highly reactive, and, it's so highly reactive that containment is often the problem. But as I feel about most things electronics, solid state is always the answer, right? So, in containing the sodium to, make it safe, in the solid state is the critical factor because, I mean, right now with what we're dealing with, lithium ion batteries are good, but they have their limits, but they're also dangerous. And aside from being dangerous, they're looked at for powering like electric vehicles and all these higher power electrical applications, for storage. And those are, proponent of, all these environmentalist type people that, save the environment, fossil fuels, et cetera, except A, they got to get charged up, right? And B, they the environmental impact of lithium mining is absolutely horrific. And it's like not something that the environment of the mining locations is going to recover from, and the leach that comes out of it is widespreading,
So it's more
So
than just the physical damage of the strip mining or whatever, but it
oh
actually
yeah.
leaves a chemical damage behind as
Uh-huh.
well. Oh,
Oh
freak.
yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention the high reactivity as well, but it's not in a solid state. And if you've ever disassembled the lithium battery before, what you'll notice is that it's a literal strip of lithium. It's a lithium foil that's rolled up. Well, put that in water and see what happens. Get it moist, get it damp. So, I mean, that's obviously very, very, very dangerous. And then you face the same thing with sodium. The only thing probably more reactive than lithium is sodium. But the difference here is that sodium, the way that they're going about it is to make it in lattice, in a solid state battery. So the way that they do that is actually very similar to how we build that RAV that I was telling you about before, because it has to do with insulative materials, dielectrics, right? So, you need a dielectric medium that has a certain K value. And then your chemical reaction between the sodium and the rest of the configuration. There's a couple of different sodium configurations out there, but they need to be able to make an energetic exchange, through this dielectric, turning the dielectric into a semiconductor because the semiconductor is the analogy in that case of the electrolytic solution. But by doing this, you're having the dielectric should increase the capacitance massively. Okay, because in order for that dielectric to break and allow for the energetic exchange in the first place, to break down that K value, it needs to reach a high level of saturation through that entire insulative material, which means that the capacitance is also super high as well. So, and things like that would be able to take on a charge, like it would be able to charge in no time flat. If it needed to boost, it would actually increase in its voltage over time. So you could use it a certain amount down, and then rather than it stay there or lose energy toward the tail end, I believe that it should actually start to gain some of its voltage back,
Oh, wow.
as well. And because you're looking at all these, and because you're adding resistance into it as one of the prerequisites, right? You should have a much higher capability of voltage and amperage, output to the conductor. So, that means that you'd be able to have a smaller battery that has more gigawatts, right? It's got more juice.
1.21.
Yeah, right. It got more juice. So, like so safer, more common material, potential for smaller at an equal or greater capacity with a higher voltage and amperage potential. Well, that seems to check about every box, doesn't it? And sodium is obviously readily able to be synthesized out of common materials
Right.
with little to no environmental impact.
Yeah, which would be a lot easier than the other. Wow.
Mhm.
All right. So what's it going to take to get something like this out? I mean, why are we not seeing these anywhere yet?
Well,
Or
I
are
don't
we?
think so. I don't think that. So this is you know, it's a conspiracy, man. Because
Is
look
this
at
like
all what
hydrogen,
I
where yes, it's better in every respect, but we don't like it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like that, except, well, hydrogen's a better example because basically it is better in every respect and it's wildly, readily, and easily
Yep.
available to anybody at any time. And that is the problem, right?
Yep.
And
They
in
can't
this
tax
case,
it.
it's worse, okay, because they have all this infrastructure that was only recently set up in the last 2 decades to produce on the lithium, and it took a long time. If you notice, the cost of the lithium batteries and everything is extraordinary. These are the people that decide, what lithium is the next big source. These are the people that decide everything, man. You know, like the people that own those mines, or the entities that decide and are invested in that infrastructure, to sit there and abandon ship and switch gears and into a new development stage under totally new technology, you know, is such a loss to them that it just makes no sense. You're just better
Right.
off improving what's already there until it's run its course. And at some point in time, you'll have somebody who actually makes this viable at a larger scale, and then they'll be forced into that arena at that point, you know. But they're not going to give up the torch that easily,
That sucks.
and
You guys realize that the biggest things that hold us back in science is the fact that we're already tooled for something else. Well, yeah, money, that's number one. But I'm saying because A, we're already tooled for something else, or B, because we have no way of tracking and taxing it, which is the thing with hydro. I believe that's I used to think it was because garages would be blowing up all over the place, but then I realized that you can run this stuff right. You can run your car right off of Brown's gas. It has to be done. They would have to build the right equipment to do it safely, but you would run your car right off of the Brown's gas. You would make it while you're driving. And it
see,
wouldn't be
so
that dangerous because you would never have a holding tank of this shit.
right, so that's the thing about hydrogen is that they try to convince the population that it was extraordinarily extreme danger, you know,
It
carrying it
is in
with
a
you.
pressure cylinder.
Well, yeah, follow, and that the infrastructure is impractical to set up,
Right.
and all this stuff, right? So that's the angle that they took to kill it. But the fact is, what you just said is that a fuel cell is all you need, and in order to create Brown's gas out of simply water and an anode and a cathode, separate of one another, okay, through a membrane. Okay, and to increase the efficiency to be able to get the gas production that you want at which, by the way, if you think about it, this is now talking over unity, because it's not only going to power the car, but it's also going to turn an alternator that's going to give it enough current to reperpetuate the process
Oh
of the
yeah.
fuel breaking apart. Okay,
Yep.
so you have to realize that too,
So
right?
all you need to
um,
keep it running is water.
right. And the idea, though, is that if you use piezo discs, like ultrasonic discs, and you actually bring your water into a vapor state, okay,
Oh.
during and then you pre-charge the water molecules, okay, as they're coming up off the piezo disc, then you break the electrolysis and the Brown's gas separates out, and then you get a much higher efficiency
Right.
that way. And you're so once the efficiency goes up, your rate goes up, and you do not need you need only really 4.5 to 12 volts DC to
Yeah, the
have
but
sustained good electrolytic reaction.
I watched a man take a 5 kW generator just like mine, a little Briggs, and he took two filters, like water filters, the ones that you screw the whole bottom on and the filter hangs. He took two of those. He took all the shit out of them, and he made one where he took plates and he just drilled a big hole and a small hole in each plate, and each one connected back and forth to one or the other rod all the way down. which gave you all your opposing voltages all the way down. And then he put something in the water, soda or something, to make it react better. I don't remember. That was the only thing I didn't remember. And then he would put water in there, and he would put the thing on, and he had a way of adding more water to it, and then it would go into the other one, and that was basically just an explosion chamber. It would prevent it from flashing back into the system, and he would just run it down, and it would bubble through water,
Yep.
and then it would come out of that, and he blocked about 2/3 of the intake on his little carburetor, and then he put the foam piece back in, but he put a piece of cardboard that blocked about 2/3 of the opening because it gets most of the oxygen it needs from the Brown's gas, right? And
Mhm.
so, and then he feeds this into it, and I'm like, there's no way that's going to work. And he took a little battery and he hooked it up and he started the process. And about 20 seconds later, he starts the generator and it sits there. And he's got a rheostat on it, a potentiometer, and he's turning the power up and down, and the generator reciprocates within about 10 seconds. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, I picture this where the potentiometer is on the gas pedal, and you literally just increase the torque as you need it, and when you let off the gas, it kills the current, and then you just stop, and you would just have just enough going to keep it idling or however you want to run it. But I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I watched this man do this with a generator, and come to find out, Toyota's already got this. I mean, they're working on stuff
Yeah.
like this.
I mean, there's this whole other situation that exists that's probably not the first thing that comes to mind, but it has to do with like the electrostatics. When you take when you're breaking the molecule apart in the charge state, but then you're using combustion, event to bring it back into a water state. But then it's actually running through a literal engine, right? And the engine is also receiving the charge, okay, from the gas that's being pulled in. There's charge biases that are going through the conductivity of the motor,
Oh, I never
okay, and
thought about
running
that.
in sync with that, the water that ends up going back into the system to be go through the electrolysis process again, is now an organized charge state. And that increases the efficiency and the rate production even further.
Wow. So you'd have to
So,
compensate for that too. You'd have to know that once you've been on the hammer for a little while, it's going to actually keep going faster and faster and faster.
well, right, which is why you can't have a direct feed from a Brown system, Brown's gas system into a carburetor for the practical engineering application.
Oh,
You
that's what I
do,
was hoping for.
well, I mean, you do want production on demand,
Right.
but at the same exact time, you also need to have a little bit of ability to bottle it up and to so you have the proper throttle response.
I get you.
Because
Because it
yeah,
is
right. You
it
need
would
to
be a
have
very sluggish car.
well, right. I mean, once it gets up to speed, and it realizes, hey, I'm making more power. You have plenty of power because hydrogen is, you know, it's, you could compress it. Like it's got a very high octane rating. Let's put it that way. Um,
I want
it's
people
really
to
interesting
understand
stuff.
something about what we're talking about right now. This is not like Star Trek stuff we're talking about, okay? This is not even
Nope,
Doctor Who stuff we're talking about. This is real shit. It's available now. It works now. I'm
it
sure
works
if him
now.
and I were in the same room with the crap that we own, we could probably make one of these Browns generators right now.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, 100%.
yeah, I mean,
In
I
fact,
would
I
love it
have
if we
one.
lived in the same town. We would do that
Yeah.
because I've got a 5 kW Briggs out there, and I want to make a Browns machine out of it because as you know, down here in Florida, after a hurricane, there's only one thing I have a lot of, and that's water. So
All right, so check this out. This is all you need to make Brown's gas, okay? Is you need now, okay, before I go into that, the one thing is that water is a pretty poor conductor, so that's why an electrolyte needs to be added into it for you to create the gas. And the one to go to is usually for most people salt because it's just, it's
it's
available and
cheap and easy.
little tiny pinch goes a
But
long,
doesn't
long
that end
way.
up
But
oxidizing the shit out of everything?
so yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Okay.
What you end up with is sodium chloride in your water, and
Right.
the sodium breaks out, okay, and then you end up with chlorine gas as a byproduct as part of
Ooh.
that, and it just kind of comes out of both sides. So your hydrogen and your oxygen are kind of tainted with chlorine. Um, so you need to keep the levels very, very, very low on the salt, or find you know another type of
I was gonna say
electrolyte.
there was an
There's a lot of times,
electrolytes. That's what they called it. There was like a powder they were using, like it looked like white powder,
yeah,
and they
you were
just
saying like a soda or something like that. I mean, honestly, those are probably bicarbs. They have a certain electrolytic property to
yeah.
stuff like that could probably work. But so I digress from that. I mean, really, all you need is if you have a DC power supply. If you have one that's variable voltage, awesome. If you don't, any DC power supply that's like 12 volts or up, you really want to see some bubbles, all you got to do is cut the wire, figure out which is the, going to act as the anode, which is going to act as the cathode. Um, you know, and then that's sort of it.
The
You're
way
just
this
gonna,
guy built this one, it was genius because he took the water filter and he drilled two holes in it, and he put two threaded rods all the way down that almost touched the bottom when you screwed the
Mhm.
bottom on. And
That's
then
it.
he had a plate and a plate and a plate, and each plate had a big hole and a little hole, and he put rubber grommets around the big holes, and then each plate, one plate would go this way, one would go the opposite way. So it was like this, and it created a back and forth all the way down. All the even ones were connected to the left bolt, and all the odd ones were connected to the right bolt, which gave
Yeah.
him a
So
lot of surface.
the trick with it is that you need the anode and the cathode to still be in proximity with each other with the electrolyte enough
Yeah,
to
but
react.
the
Okay,
plates were
but you
really
also
close.
need to, yeah, but you also need to keep them separate because you need to be able to catch each gas independently. So if you just want Brown's gas, you could pick up the oxygen and the hydrogen together. That's fine. But the better way to do it is to get your hydrogen, your oxygen separate, and then recombine them. As they're going in. Like that's legit.
Oh,
That's
that is
that's a
cool.
legit.
Yeah, that's
That,
even
that's a
cooler.
legit
Yeah,
way to do it. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because then you have an ECU that's familiar with how much of this and how much of that at certain power bands and stuff, and it can adjust based on the levels of compression, and it would just be an algorithmic ECU. But
I have a
you know,
question for you. Let's see. Moorhead asked, do you think sodium batteries at some point will increase EV vehicle range?
I mean, I think that they definitely will. It
But we're not
seems
there
like that's
yet, huh?
probably you're right, right. That's the technology that they're putting the money into now, which tea leaves usually say that then that's the route they're going to go.
Yep.
Because again, to build the infrastructure, to be able to get basic product out to market, right? That initial investment is so vast for that, right? And they need to be able to do it at such a scale that it becomes competitive with the lithium market, which shouldn't be that hard, but it's established,
Right.
and as anybody who's ever opened a business knows, your first couple of years, they're not the best years you're going to have, you know? So that's sort of what it's up against right now is overcoming that hurdle. And hopefully it just doesn't die on arrival. And hopefully it doesn't just get all the interests of it in development don't get bought up by the same companies that have the lithium interest and they get
Yes.
shelled. Because maybe people are aware, maybe they're not. That happens and it happens all the time. And you hear about the next great thing. And then you're like, whatever happened to that? Well, trust me, nobody gave up on their dream and nobody gave up on their precious lifetime achievement. They took the money and sold it to, a company
Right.
that had no intention of ever putting it out there, because it just simply was going to destroy what they already had. And they already knew what it was going to take to get that off the ground. So, that's the unfortunate reality of this is predicting it is, it's
Yeah.
hard.
I got another
At that,
great question from Moorhead Media. A lot of fire departments now are, and I'll attest to this. A lot of fire departments now are just allowing these EVs to burn once they become fully involved, and it's because of the explosion hazard, but also the very high temperature that it burns at. And water's not all that effective. You really have to add foam or something to it to get these batteries to go out. His question is, do you think these are going to be easier to put out, and what kind of headache you think these will be for the fire department? Are we still going to have to just let them burn?
um, I mean, I'm not so familiar with what they're doing at this moment because imagine how proprietary that is.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
Right. I mean, imagine how proprietary, like, so for me to speak with any sort of authority, like I have some kind of inside knowledge when I don't is
No,
insane.
I appreciate the answer.
Right, I could just speculate based on what I know of chemistry and physics and how these sorts of things work, how a solid state sodium battery ought to be, and the way that I see it, if the sodium is set up in a dielectric matrix, okay, in that type of circumstance, it should be as close to reasonably inert as possible. Okay, because what you'd be looking at is, first of all, the battery would be a hardened solid material, so the sodium would be trapped in, let's say, ceramic lattice, okay, as your dielectric. Um, you know, you would need to smash that apart in order for each individual piece of sodium that's permeated into that lattice structure to then be reactive, right? And then if that reacted, it would then have to blow another piece off that would then have to get reacted with again. So it would be a lot more difficult because it wouldn't have the high risk of that chain reaction where once it goes up, once it starts to burn, it's burning.
Yeah.
Once you hit it with water, it makes it worse, not better. Sodium, is more reactive than lithium with water. All right, which is crazy.
So it might not be better.
But but the fact
I was
is that
involved in I was involved in an explosion in 1992 that involved a propane cylinder and a bunch of chainsaw motors. So you talk about, I've seen crazy shit combust, let me tell you. All right, guys, real
I
quick
don't
here.
know.
We're watching some rotation coming into Jasper, Georgia. It's just passing Talking Rock right now, and this is going to be a tornado warning, radar indicated tornado warning with 0.75-inch hail. And this is right now, the couplet is sitting right over Rudin and Jasper in Georgia. And coming up next is going to be Marble Hill, Daniels, Tate, and also Holcomb, and then Nelson eventually. So watch out. We do have a tornado warning right now in northern West Georgia, and we are going to continue to watch that here as that progresses south. And let me put this back on the other radar. All right, so where are we at? What do we want to talk about? Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up tonight before we go?
Well, I know that Paul had mentioned something about seismic activity, and then he had mentioned something about sharks separately of one another. But it being Shark Week and all, I figured I'd bring this up because I found it kind of interesting. But I saw something that said that there's a few regions of the ocean where the seismic activity, okay, is actually really bad. And, there's high populations of sharks in those areas. And those sharks in those areas tend to be, whether native and kind of living there or transient through the area, tend to be highly agitated.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, what was interesting is if you think about it, it just made total sense. And they didn't say it, but I immediately knew. I was like, they pick up on the vibrations of the seismic activity. But all those vibrations also cause electromagnetic fluctuation, you know, in the immediate area of the seismic activity. And the other sensor that they rely on mostly is that electromagnetic sensor. So they have something that catches the vibration in the water, and they have something that catches the pulse, the electrical pulses in the water. And this is how they hone in and they strike with extreme accuracy. Well, if you take those two senses away, the shark is really left with its smell, which is fantastic, but that only puts you in a general direction of
Right.
something,
Yeah.
and it's diffuse. And, yeah, you can smell a drop of blood from miles away. Great. But at the end of the day, that's only going to get you in the ballpark. That's not going to tell you where it is. And then their eyesight is kind of like, eh, right? So
Right.
what ends up happening is that these sharks going through these areas when the seismic activity and the electromagnetic activity is picking up get so disoriented, but yet they still have all the same drive that they had previously. And now they're restricting themselves to basically just chomping and violently chomping in a disoriented fashion at whatever they can see and hone in on with their eyesight. So, these sharks are wildly aggressive, in those regions. And I just thought that was super interesting
I,
because it makes sense.
we have a slight uptick here, but and we've had a few seismic events lately. But I think you're probably more talking about like the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's probably going to be over in the Pacific, I would think, because that's where the highest concentration of earthquakes would be. But yeah, that's very interesting. I've always
Yeah.
wondered. I've always wanted to see, and I haven't done it yet, but I want to see if I can draw any direct correlation between solar flares and solar activity and seismic activity, because that's a lot of energy that's thrown at our planet all at once. And I don't know. I would like to see if that has any effect on the physicality of the Earth when all those protons come down from space. I don't know. I've just always been interested in that, and I'm at the point now where I just need to sit down one day and work with Grok, and I can probably see if we can come up with some kind of correlation. But anyway, yep.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I love trying to prove things. Go ahead.
well, I mean, there is a direct relationship though, because there through our magnetosphere, right? There's a direct energy exchange, and nobody likes to talk about this because it's like, I guess it's a little out there, but science itself knows this. There's a direct energy relationship and exchange that occurs between the sun, the earth, and the moon.
Right.
Okay. And what you're sort of dealing with is literally an anode cathode effect, okay, between the sun and the moon, with the earth being the intermedium of the two. And if you notice something, the sun, it burns bright, in the red spectrum, right? And it's hot, right? We get a lot of infrared radiation off of the sun.
Right.
And they try to pose it like, the moon in the sky is lit because of the sun and reflecting off, but that's not what's happening at all. You see, again, that's why if the moon was just simply reflecting, that it would be reflecting the infrared, because that's the frequency band that it's throwing off in that spectrum, but it doesn't. See, it throws off cool blue light. And why? Because that's the other side of the spectrum, is the ultraviolet spectrum.
Right.
And when you have this energy exchange between the sun and the moon in this circumstance, with this earth being the intermedium between them, you end up with an excitation of the material makeup of the moon itself, rather than a reflective or refractive event. So it's important to kind of get your head around what I'm saying with that, because the energy of the sun obviously impacts the earth, right? And the energy of the moon and its gravitational pull and its reflection on us with the moonlight, is probably just like the most basic, um, you know, energetic relationship we have with the moon that's probably not fully understood yet. So there's more to it than that. And then we have pockets of energy that form off of our magnetosphere that are from these relationships that we're discussing entirely, these high energy density level flare sites that are basically vortexes off of our magnetosphere that have huge stores of, energy in them. And they feed directly to the earth as well.
Yep.
And those are called flares. You know, they're plasmatic flares, flare arrays, yeah, or something like that. So, I mean, it's really interesting because if all of that has to do with our Earth being in the middle, then you know that a shift in this direction or that direction absolutely affects the the radiation, which is direct relationship to frequency. Okay, that's coming into the earth, which that frequency and that resonance, as it correlates to like our Schumann resonance, which is an offset beat frequency of this entire reaction. So it is definitely a proponent in seismic events, because if you start to have constructive interference of the Schumann resonance, then you shake the earth.
Yep.
That's how that goes.
Yep. I think not only I think it's possible, but I also know that I think everything's possible if you have an instrument sensitive enough. But yeah, a lot of times things actually happen, but we are not quite able to sense it yet. All right, with equipment or whatever. All right, guys, we're coming up on 10:47. Let's do a last roll call here. Is there anything else you guys want to answer tonight? How does these affect the volcanic structure of Earth? Well, that's what we were just talking about, I mean, I think there's some effect, but
I mean, I think so too. I don't know. I have a whole weird theory about the mantle and the outer core and the core of the Earth. Like they say that it's magma, and they want you to think that it's like some kind of like melted rock or some stupid shit like that. But like I actually think that once the material is broken down, it enters into like a very, very dense material plasmatic state,
yep,
which is exactly what it is. And the thing about that is that it organizes based on the resonance nodules of of the earth. So, you know, basically when it starts to solidify that deep down and it starts to make new base layers that push kind of everything else up, the material, like the actual elemental material that you are going to find at those levels, are based on the frequencies, meaning that it's not because this much gold and this much silica and this much carbon and this much whatever was just deposited on the earth and now it's coming up this way. It's actually depositing this way out of a state of potential, you know, which is weird and funny because that would mean that when a volcano erupts, right, and this magma actually comes to the surface, right, why, if it's all different hodgepodge stuff down there, right, with like basically whatever chance of getting whatever, how come the stuff that comes out of the volcanoes, whether you're here, there, or anywhere, is all the same? It's because it didn't solidify under those same resonant conditions down low. It was brought up, and in that transient state, it automatically falls into the most basic material components and basically turns into glass.
yep.
you know,
People
so
don't understand how unimaginably high the pressures are in the mantle.
uh-huh.
I mean, we think of pressure here in one atmosphere or two atmospheres. We're talking thousands of atmospheres. We're talking thousands of pounds per square inch or more. It's highly compressed.
You're right. It's highly compressed. And what's weird about that, when you think about it, is something that's, if you put something that's liquid under pressure, it could freeze, right? We know that. Well, if you take something solid and you put it under that much pressure, it melts.
Right. Yep.
Because the molecule structure that makes it what it is breaks apart.
Right.
That's what it does. And then, it could stay molten at a much like at a high temperature, temperatures involved in it. You get the whole point. It's but it just goes back into a state of plasmatic potential in a very, very, very dense state. That's my opinion. It's weird.
All right. Let's see here. Jupiter atmosphere. I don't know what we're doing there. It pretty much is mostly atmosphere. I think it's kind of a gas giant. Mostly gas. Let's see. All right, guys, hit that like and subscribe. I do appreciate it. We've been doing a lot more on our reruns the following morning, just so you guys know. The numbers have come up. I've listed this as an actual YouTube show and a podcast on YouTube. And although my numbers at night have been about the same, I'm getting more rewatches now. So that's kind of cool.
I
All
love
right,
that, man.
let's see here.
It's all about the reach, right? If you're
Yep.
going to take the time to talk and show all this stuff, the people need to hear it.
Okay, and dispatch keeps putting in. We did frequencies caused by quakes. Did you do? Did you want to talk about anything with frequency? The quakes causing frequencies, or I'm not sure what that is exactly.
I mean, that's really vague. Earthquakes are, by their
Frequency.
very
They are.
nature, frequency.
um,
So, I mean,
can science duplicate what we're seeing with the paranormal? That's a very tough question to just answer like that.
somewhat, somewhat,
Yeah. It's
somewhat.
difficult. The paranormal is very difficult. I ran Florida Paranormal Research for about 8 years. And I'll tell you guys, it's very difficult because right off the bat, most of your science people don't want. It's not that they don't believe or they're atheists, not necessarily. They just, in their community, they can't really participate.
I can.
Yeah, you can and I can. I feel like I love it. And so I feel like I can deep dive science and end up with ghosts.
Yeah, you could create resonance states that, manipulate kind of the space time of a very hyper specific locality and phase things in and out. Start to get weird stuff when you start having RF radiation start to go off, like those high energy levels and stuff like that.
mhm.
Like you'll get dark spots in your room. It screws with your electronics real bad, but not in a way that you would think. Not like it's failing or something like that. It'll start controlling itself. Um, yeah. So yeah, there is some pretty weird stuff. And then there's multiple other instances too with the, high voltage and electromagnetic experiments that you could act like if you create a high energy density here, okay, and then there's atmosphere above you, obviously, right? You could actually create sort of like a point above you that actually has a low energy density state,
Oh,
and vice versa. So,
an equal and
like,
opposite reaction.
exactly, and it's a inverse relationship that they have with one another between ground energy and
Man, I
atmospheric
wish I
energy.
had you on my paranormal research team. You have no idea. I do have a quick question. I want to do a couple of quick fire questions here. If you have no answer, that's cool, but let me just run these through here. Um, let's see here. You answered that one. I know where one is. Hold on. Do you believe that the sun is getting hotter or putting out more energy? We've got somebody in that says, does the sun feel hotter than ever before? Certainly much hotter than even in the last 15 years. I don't think the data shows that, does it?
I mean, we're in a solar maximum, which is different than the sun being hotter.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
what's important to realize is that like the reaction that's going on in the sun is somewhat goes in cycles, okay, that we're not local to, and but we're subject to the outcome of those cycles. All right, and it's compression and decompression events, and it works off of convection eddy currents mostly. So there's different layers of exchange that occur, and as it's expanding and contracting, you get different habits that occur For instance, like solar flares and electromagnetic activity that gets perturbated out into our solar system, which we're subject to. Um, that all could affect temperature, could affect UV radiation, and you going outside and getting a sunburn could affect electronics and how our communication systems work because of interference. Um, you know, there's a whole lot of different things, but as far as the sun getting hotter, even if we perceive a temperature difference, that does not mean that the sun itself is running at a hotter temperature. It just simply doesn't work that.
Right, and you also have other factors like weather and climate when you're doing your measurements too. And I also I believe the sun seems fairly stable from day to day, but like you said, it fluctuates, and with the right equipment, you could see it fluctuating. I know with we get a lot of protons kicked this way with the solar, with sunspots and things like that. But I actually think I used to think that it was getting hotter every year too, but the numbers just don't bear that out. And when you take um, the heat island effect and things like that out of the equation, there's really been no rise at all in global temperature. So I don't know. I think what you're probably feeling is the same thing that I think it is. Every year older I get, I'm less able to handle heat. And so I go outside now and I start sweating like a stuck pig. It's running down my face, it's running down everywhere. And I can't handle it, and I feel like shit for 2 hours. I mowed 3 strips of grass. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so I propose that maybe it's not the sun that's changing. Maybe it's you. I don't know. It's with me. I think it is because I handle the heat less every year. I can handle less and less of it for less time and less temperature. And then also climatologically, you got to look at it that way. Your area could literally have 3 years of warmer than normal temperatures, while the next state over is having 3 years of lower than normal temperatures. So when you add climate and then the weather, which is the 10 days around us now, there, I think that's probably what lends to do it. I don't believe that there's been any discernible raise in solar radiation beyond the norms. All right. Let's see. Anything else, guys? We're going to call it here pretty soon. Um, I've been on for a couple hours now, and well, thanks, Victor and Vector and all the different vectors. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Yep. Hopefully, everybody had a good time tonight. We got in Joe from Old Man Builds. You guys catch their show. When's you guys' show?
Yep, we have a show every Friday at 5 Eastern, and it's on Old Man Builds. I'm sure Dispatch will throw our link up in the chat.
Oh, I've had it up there. It's pinned.
Awesome. Yeah,
Look for
so
my
go check
pinned
that out.
comment. Please go over and give them a subscribe, guys. You know how important it is on this, and throw on one of their videos and let it play when you go to bed tonight.
Yeah, we get a little unhinged sometimes, so
That's
hang in
good.
there. We get through the dense stuff usually at the beginning, and then it kind of falls off the rails.
Well, there you go. That makes the best kind of shows, truthfully.
I like to say it's like two theoretical physicists and an engineer, drinking beers in a garage, on a Friday night. It's kind of like what it's like. So come hang out with us. We'd love the company.
Beware the buzzed scientist. I don't know about you guys with 3 beers and a Tesla coil. I don't know, man.
Hey, listen, we're not generally really drinking. Sometimes I have a beer while we're walking.
Yeah, no, you're like me. I
We're,
haven't
we're not
drank
we're
in
not doing
years.
anything heavy.
I could probably get a buzz on about 3 shots of beer right now because I haven't drank in like 10 years.
Yeah, that'd probably do it then.
Oh, boy. Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else? Any last minute questions about anything for Joe or myself? We're going to be signing off here in about 5 minutes. Anything else, guys?
We ran the spectrum tonight, Ian. We did well.
Yeah, we did. No, I love all these topics. And yes, Ted, nobody did UFOs better than Art Bell. I tend to agree. There's some good UFO shows now, like the one that we support here, but yeah, truthfully, the OG of the paranormal reporting and broadcasting was definitely Art Bell. I have a little tribute to Art Bell every night. If you guys know, when you listen to my out at night and you hear I say good night, America, and around the world, and that's what he used to say at the end of every one of his shows. And so I adopted that as my little ode to art at the end of my show. So there you go. Every night I say the same thing he used to say, signing off on my closer. All right. And guys, those of you who were following, we got a copyright strike 2 nights ago. I like to report these just like anything else. And I took AI and I wrote the first one, sent it in, and it kicked it back and said, this is not fair use and we're not going to submit this. You're going to have to deal with the strike. So I went and looked and found out that YouTube does this to most of them. They kicked them all back hoping that you'll just drop it and take the class or whatever. Well, I'm not going to do it. I told Grok I needed to write it better. I need it to be more comprehensive and more written sharply, more of a legal challenge. And it did. It wrote it, and it actually was 400 characters short. And I sent it, and it worked. Sometimes less is more. And so now it's been submitted to the company. Here's the cool part. The company has 2 choices. Let it die, or they have to file a court order on me. And then their intent to sue me, basically. Well, they're not going to sue me because there's nothing here to sue. And they know that, and I know that. And the truth is, behind all this stuff is, all they want to do is strike your account so you'll quit doing it. I fight them on it. I fight them on it because I don't want them doing this. What I did was fair use. I spoke over it. I did not present it in its original format. I had educational content. I kept their bugs in the corner and their Chiron on the bottom. I did everything I was supposed to do. And so they're getting the big kiss my ass right now. And so there you go. I'm not going to worry about it. It's done. It's sent. I don't expect to hear anything else about it. The strike will disappear in 10 days. And by the way, I've never had a strike that stuck.
Good.
6 years. I've had, I think, 3 or 4 of them, and Carlotta's had 2, and we have successfully fought every one of them. All right, let's see here. You know, the copyright thing is one of those things out there that's been taken to too much of an extreme. You know, I'm carrying a live video for 6 hours, and at 4 hours into the video, a guy drove by with the song Run DMC was playing out the windows of the car for 9.5 seconds, and they'll take every bit of my monetization away and give it to MCA Records or whatever. Just like that.
Yeah, that's out of control.
And so, yeah, now I can usually get it back by erasing the song and all that. But this one was actually a strike. You only get 3 of these and you lose your channel. But they also fall off. You can take a class, they fall off in 3 months. You can not take the class, they fall off in 1 year. So it's not the end of the world. And because I have no other ones, I'm not really sweating it. But I hate getting these things because what I was doing was clearly covered under fair use. All right. So anyway, Yanni, thank you. Everybody, thank you for being here tonight. Ted and Lambert and Deploribus and Moorhead and Kat and Dispatch. Thank you to all the regulars, all the members, Matt, everybody, Jesse. Man, there was Josh. I'm just looking. There was a lot of folks in here tonight. It was a great show. I'm glad you guys were here, Victor and Vector, and everybody else. Man, what a great crowd tonight. All right, guys, thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed the science show. Any last thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you again for having me on, Ian. It's always a pleasure. Your chat is great. I always enjoy seeing what they have to say, and I hope they enjoyed the show. And until next time.
All right, and I do want to come on and do with you guys a show. We're just gonna have to figure it out because your live show is on when I'm live on terrestrial radio at 5 p.m. on Fridays. So we're just
Okay.
going to have to figure something out. But
We'll do a
but
special. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll work it out. We got to let Nathan get past Tesla Tech, and I'm sure once he's back from Albuquerque, um, hopefully he doesn't make a wrong turn at Albuquerque, right?
yeah,
So,
there was a lot of
yeah,
wrong turns in Albuquerque,
a lot of wrong turns
especially
at
if you're
Albuquerque.
traveling subterranean.
Yeah,
But yeah,
well, taking a wrong turn at Albuquerque. Anyway,
yeah. Bugs
no,
Bunny used
for
to say
when he
that
gets back,
every time.
exactly.
Yeah. All right, guys, and yeah, I'm sitting in my break room today eating my enchilada from Taco Bell, and I look up, and you know what's playing on TV? Um, Maud. I don't know. Somebody had put on TV Land, which we broadcast out of our station, and
On
then
the
and
way.
then the one came on after that was called Alice. You guys remember Alice with
Hmm.
Mel's Diner? Flo, get the food out.
Hmm.
It's okay. I was just exclaiming. The cat went nuts. He goes, "Don't yell at me. I didn't do it." So anyway, but yeah, I just a funny thing. I love those old shows. I miss the old shows sometimes. The stupid old shows. It's funny how a show didn't need a whole lot of quality because you only had 9 other channels, and and most of those were garbage.
Well,
And so
you used to be able to get away with doing and saying a lot more on television too. So, yeah, at
yeah,
least it's got the entertainment factor. You know what?
I mean there was a lot of good shows on back then, and I don't think they would work today just because there's just so many other options out there. When people only had 10 or 12 options, that's what you get. Does everybody know why there's no channel 1 on your television? I'll tell you. It's a neat story, but I'm not going to go into it because I don't have it in front of me. But when the channel spectrum was first proposed, it was in Russia. And in Russia, when they put out their televisions, channel 1 was the government channel where you got your orders. So when they adopted the channel system here for our TVs just a few years later, they started with channel 2 because we're a free country. We don't have an order channel. We don't have a government channel. And so that's why every TV starts with channel 2 and not channel 1. I thought that would be a fun little thing to end on tonight. All right, guys. Matt, you've never been so sick in your entire life. Well, buddy, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. When I feel like that, I go sit on the toilet and pray.
True.
God, I hate that. Oh, man. All right, man. Well, I hope you get feeling better, Matt. All right, everybody. It's been my pleasure tonight to be your host. Special thanks to Joe from Old Man Builds for coming in tonight and being our science guy here on the channel. Thank you very much. It's been a great conversation. Thank you to all my members and my moderators and all the viewers out there tonight for being here and being a supporter of the show. Guys, this is the Sights and Sounds of Earth right here on StarShip Adventures, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night for another episode of the Sights and Sounds of Earth, and we'll dive into whatever crazy shit happens to be going on in the world at that moment. And in the meantime, go to Taco Bell and order an enchilada. We're trying to keep these things alive. This is one of those retro things they brought back, and I've been encouraging everybody to buy as many of them as possible because I want them to keep the enchilada. I think we need to keep the enchilada, so help us with that. All right, everybody, have a good night and a safe tomorrow. Broadcasting live from Southwest Florida. My name's Ian, StarShip Adventures on YouTube. Have a good night, everybody, and a safe tomorrow.
Good night.
All right, we're out. This is the YouTube channel Starship Adventures, broadcasting live from Starship Studios in North Fort Myers, Florida, in the United States of America. We thank you for joining us this evening for another broadcast of the Sights and Sounds of Earth, covering every breaking news story across this troubled planet of ours. We've brought you the raw, unfiltered pulse of the world in real time through our unique multi-screen format, broadcasting in high definition worldwide via fiber optic connection. Starship Adventures, a new kind of YouTube content. To our regular viewers, our loyal crew members, our amazing moderators, and everyone who tunes in each night at 9 p.m. Eastern, we thank you. Your support keeps this independent voice alive and well. We'll be back tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Eastern with another live edition of the Sights and Sounds of Earth, right here on Starship Adventures. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and may God bless you and these United States of America. This is Starship Adventures, and this concludes our broadcast day. Good night, America, and around the world. Kilo Oscar 4, Echo Foxtrot Sierra. Signing off. QSY, 7-3s, everyone, 7-3s.